The galaxy had old rules, and some rules were never broken. Among the oldest was the one about the hospital ships. They were sacred. They were neutral. Every fleet, every empire, every warrior in the stars knew this law: never fire on the Red Cross. The Red Cross glowed like a promise. On white holes drifting through the void, painted large enough to be seen even without scanners, it was a shield stronger than any weapon. It told every soldier in every corner of the galaxy, these ships carry no guns, no warriors, no war, only the wounded, only the doctors, only the children. For centuries, even in the darkest wars, this rule held. Empires collapsed, fleets burned, planets died. But the hospital ships were always left untouched. Their corridors were filled with the smell of medicine instead of smoke. Their engines humming with the soft rhythm of mercy instead of war. But one night, in a quiet star lane far from the center of power, that law was shattered. The ship's name was Mercy Dawn. It was huge, but slow, built not for battle, but for life. Its outer hull was painted white, with massive red crosses stretching from bow to stern, glowing faintly in the cold light of distant suns. Inside, doctors worked without sleep. Nurses hurried down the corridors. Children whispered in beds, asking when they would see home again. Civilians from shattered colonies lay side by side with injured soldiers. They breathed the same filtered air, listened to the same hum of engines, and trusted that the galaxy's oldest law kept them safe. The captain of Mercy Dawn stood on the bridge, tired but steady. His ship was armed with nothing but medical drones and emergency pods. He knew that didn't matter because no one would dare attack them. The Red Crosses were their armor, at least that was the belief. The first warning came as a flicker on. The sensors, small signatures, fast and sharp, appearing at the edge of the star lane. The crew thought nothing of it. Many fleets passed through these regions. Pirates sometimes stalked the shadows. But even pirates knew the rule. The captain leaned forward, narrowing his eyes at the glowing symbols. Then the comms officer stiffened. "Sir, they're locking targeting systems." The bridge went silent. "That's impossible," one of the junior officers whispered. "No one targets a hospital ship." The captain's voice was calm but cold. "Open a channel. Remind them who we are." The transmission went out. A clear, powerful signal across space. The Red Cross symbol pulsed in the message, accompanied by a short line of words repeated in every galactic tongue. "This is a neutral hospital vessel. We carry only civilians and wounded. Do not engage." For a long moment, nothing came back. Then the first missile launched. The crew gasped as sensors screamed. Trails of fire lit the black sky. The enemy raiders were closing fast, ignoring every law, every warning, every plea. The captain's hand clenched into a fist. Evasive maneuvers. Brace for impact. The Mercy Dawn shook violently as the first warhead slammed into the hull. Metal screamed. White walls buckled. Flames burst through the medical bays. Doctors threw themselves over patients as debris rained down. Children screamed in terror, clutching each other as smoke poured through the air vents. The comms lit up with desperate cries. "This is Mercy Dawn. We are under attack. We are a hospital ship, repeat. A hospital ship, civilians on board. We need help?" The voice of the nurse cracked as the channel was flooded with static. In space, the raiders circled like wolves. They ignored the screams. They ignored the laws. To them, this was just a target. Easy prey. On Earth, deep within the command centers of humanity, the signal arrived. The distress call echoed through the control halls, carried on encrypted waves, bypassing all delays. 100 officers listened, screens filled with burning, images of the Mercy Dawn, smoke, fire, explosions, doctors dragging children down ruined corridors. Blood on white floors. No one in the control room spoke. The council chamber, high above the cities of Earth, was silent. Generals stared at the transmission with cold eyes. Politicians sat frozen. Even the most seasoned admirals who had seen entire planets fall in war gripped their seats with fury they dared not show, because they all knew what this meant. The galaxy had broken the one rule it could never afford to break. The Red Cross had been fired upon. The chairwoman of Earth's council lowered her head. Her voice was little more than a whisper, but it carried through the chamber like thunder. They knew what they were doing. In the burning corridors of the hospital ship, chaos reigned. A doctor with blood running down his face carried a child in his arms. A nurse pulled an injured soldier through the flames. Sirens wailed as emergency. Bulkheads slammed shut, sealing rooms filled with smoke in the command bridge. The captain's hand shook as he tried to keep control. He sent message after message, each more desperate than the last. Civilian vessel, do not fire, patience on board. We are unarmed. But every message ended the same way, with more explosions tearing through the hull. The raiders laughed over there, comes voices sharp and cruel. They had no fear of punishment. They thought Earth would stay silent. They were wrong. Back on Earth, silence turned to movement. The council chambers filled with shadows as old war advisors stepped forward. These were not men and women of peace. These were veterans of Earth's darkest wars, long retired, waiting for the day they might be needed again. One of them spoke. Activate the protocols. Another nodded. It is time. Hidden beneath oceans, in sealed hangars buried under mountains and shipyards floating above forgotten moons, the fleets of Earth began to stir. Engines, long silent, hummed again. Cannons older than empires shivered as power surged through their cores. Command codes sealed for centuries, unlocked with trembling fingers. The council did not debate. The time for speeches was over. Humanity's answer would not be words, would be fire. The Mercy Dawn groaned as her hull tore apart. Her engines sputtered, flickering under the strain. Survivors packed into escape pods, though many knew the raiders would destroy them too. One nurse sat with a group of children, trying to keep them calm. Her voice was gentle, even as the ceiling rumbled above her. Close your eyes. We'll see the stars soon. Don't be afraid. The captain stayed at his post. His ship was dying, but he refused to abandon it. With blood on his face and fire all around, he sent one last message across the stars. 2. Earth Command. This is Mercy Dawn. We are under attack. Civilians, children, we cannot hold. The signal cut out. In the depths of Earth, the council received the last words. For a long moment, nobody breathed. Then the chairwoman raised her head, her eyes filled with something colder than steel. Prepare them, the admiral saluted. Fists clenched against their chests, across Earth and beyond. The war protocols, buried, hidden, locked away, flashed, live once more. The galaxy had crossed the line, and humanity would answer. Fire rolled across the white hole like a red wave. That would not stop. The giant red crosses, once so bright and clean, now glowed through smoke and sparks, as if they were on fire too. Inside the ship, the air tasted like metal and ash. Walls shook, lights flickered, sirens cried without breath. People ran, but there was nowhere to go, because Mercy Dawn was a wounded whale in a black ocean, slow and heavy and full of life that could not swim away. Across the void, the raiders circled and watched, their engines cold blue, their weapons ready, their laughter quiet on private channels. No apology, no warning, no mercy. And far away, on a blue world called Earth, cold eyes looked at a burning screen and understood something simple and terrible. This was not a mistake, not a pirate. Raid gone wrong, not confusion in the dark. This was a choice. Someone had decided to shoot the doctors first. The blast doors to Medical Bay C2 were jammed and the smoke was getting thick. And Dr. Leanne Park had to make a choice in a breath. She pressed her palm to the emergency panel, saw the red light flash manual override failed, and knew she could not wait for a tech. She wedged her shoulder under the frame, pushed with all her weight, and felt the metal move a finger's width, then another. Then stop again because the ship had twisted and the door had changed shape in the heat. Behind her, a boy coughed hard. The kind of cough that sounded like he was trying to push his lungs out. And the nurse beside him held a wet cloth over his mouth and whispered something soft. The boy's name was Tavi. He had a stuffed star sewn from an old ship blanket. He would not drop it even when the wall threw sparks. "We have to cut it," Leanne said. Her voice sounded calm to her own ears, and that surprised her because her heart felt like a hammer. "Mira, bring me the cutter." Nurse Mira Tan slid across the deck, pushed through a tangle of wires, and caught the handle of the portable plasma cutter before it could roll away. She handed it to Leanne and looked up at the ceiling where it creaked, where black hairline cracks ran like spider legs. 2 minutes, she said, and she did not explain 2 minutes until what? Leanne nodded, set the cutter's nose to the twisted seam, and pulled the trigger. A bright white line bit into the metal. Heat washed her face. The sound was a scream inside a scream, steel crying inside ship-wide alarms. She cut. She did not look up when the ship shook again. She did not look up when someone shouted that the pressure in the corridor was dropping. She did not look up when a little hand touched her elbow. She finished the cut in one sweep, kicked the door at the right place, and the panel dropped inward. Like a broken shield, fresh air from the next compartment hit them. It was not clean air, but it was not smoke, and everyone felt the difference at once. The children moved first, because children always moved first when they could see a way out, and the older patients followed, pulling their own drips, dragging their own oxygen tanks, not waiting for wheelchairs that would not come because most of the bots were gone to fight other fires. "Keep low," Mira said, and pressed Tavy's head down with a gentle hand, and the boy nodded, even while holding his cloth bundle tight. Leanne waited until the room was almost empty before she stepped through and checked her count against the list on her slate. To missing. She looked back at the gray smoke that curled around bed frames and cabinet edges and thought of the 2 beds near the window that had the worst burns. "Go," Mira told her, reading her face. "I'll take them forward." Leanne went back into the smoke. On the bridge, Captain Armand Reyes stood with one hand braced on a console and the other flat at his side. The glass of the main screen was cracked at the edge, and static crawled across it in bright insects. Data jumped and fell, but the worst numbers stayed steady. Hull breaches in 3 rings, fire in 6 decks, life support struggling. "Transmit again," he said. The comms officer, Lieutenant Prax, swallowed. His lips were white. At the corners? Aye. He sent the same message, in 10 languages, using every ship code and every humanitarian channel. And he sent it old-fashioned, too, as audio burst, because even raiders sometimes listened to old noise out of habit. The words were plain: neutral vessel, hospital ship. Civilians on board. We request ceasefire. We request assistance. Do not engage. No answer. A bright flash filled the screen as a new missile tore one of the cargo spines and threw it out into space. Boxes and beds and a long ribbon of bandages spun like ghosts. "Navigation," Reyes said. "We need a turn. Give me 10 degrees starboard. Bleed speed into the shadow of the gas cloud. Make them guess our heat." "Sir, the port thrusters are gone. And fight with what you have." "Yes, Captain." Reyes tapped the arm of his chair with 2 fingers, a habit from years when old analog switches needed testing. He watched. The raiders, they were not closing to board, were not trying to steal. They kept distance and shot with clean rhythm. It was strange, and it told him something. This was not greed. This was a message to someone else. "Medical," he said into the open channel. "Report." Base E2 evacuated 2D sections. Someone answered, "Female, cool and fast." He thought it was Tan, one of the nurses. "Dr. Park is retrieving 2 non-ambulatory from C2. Deck fire under partial control. We need more foam on the forward feed." "You have it," Reyes said, and he flicked his eyes to engineering. Chief Dahl, grease on his cheek, and a mask around. His neck pushed new coolant to the fire pumps, then coughed twice and gave a thumbs up. The camera almost missed. Reyes wanted to order him to a safe station. "There were not many safe stations left, Captain," Prax said, and his voice was small. "A broadband threat just came through. It is not addressed to us. It is addressed to anyone who helps us." Reyes turned. "Play it." A dry voice filled. "The bridge, the sort that liked hearing itself. Any ship that interferes will be destroyed. The carrier vigilant crown commands this lane. Medical markings do not protect war cargo. Stand clear. Reyes did not know that name, but he knew. The tone. It was not a pirate warning. It was an official warning, the kind that came from someone who believed he would never be punished. Someone who believed his flag was bigger than the law. Prax looked up. Sir, war cargo? Reyes felt his jaw lock. We carry only civilians. And patients per manifest and per scan. They are lying because they need a story. He stepped closer to the cracked screen. A small dot moved like a fish behind the radar line. It was heavier, bigger, colder. It did not fire. It watched. He did not have time to look longer. The ship shuddered again, and the bridge lights went out for 2 heartbeats. In that blackness, someone whispered a prayer that sounded more like a promise than a plea. Leon found the 2 missing in C, to where she expected them. The burn patient in the brace who hated being touched, and the old miner with the iron lung frame who could not be moved. Without 2 people and a ramp, the air was terrible now, a sweet metal taste that made each breath hurt. The room was red from fire behind the wall. She crouched by the burn patient, a girl with half her scalp shaved and skin like new paper. I need to lift you, Leanne. Said it will hurt. We will go fast. The girl blinked. Will it be worse than the last time? No, Leanne lied. Nothing is worse than the last time. She hooked her arms and lifted, and the girl made no sound, and that worried Leanne more than if she had screamed. But there was no time to think about signs. So she leaned her shoulder under and pushed them both out through the gap while she dragged the oxygen line with her boot. She came back for the old miner and the iron frame. She knew she could not move it alone. When she looked up, 2 orderlies were already there, faces black with smoke, eyes bright. They said nothing. They lifted the frame in a practiced grip that had saved many bodies in many disasters. They moved. Like a small machine? They cleared the door as the ceiling in the far corner sagged and dropped in a short burst of red sparks. In the corridor outside, Mira guided the children toward dissection, where the ship still had pressure and light that did not flicker. She kept count with her fingers because her slate had melted to a dead shine. Tavi tugged her sleeve. The window broke, he said, eyes too wide. I saw the stars. They're always there, Mira said, and she smiled because smiles were part of first aid. Are we going to fall? No, she said, and she made her voice firm. We're going to the bright room. We will have ice water. We'll sing the ship's song. Tavi swallowed. I don't know the words. I will teach you. He nodded and looked back only once. On the dark side of the moon, called Tethys, Earth's Kepler relay spun and listened the way it had listened for 100 years. It was the ear of humanity, and it did not sleep. Signals came down the long radio rivers, through dust and cold, across gravity wells and interference curtains. Most were noise. Some were requests for medical supplies or power coils. Some were smugglers talking too loud. One signal hit different. It carried the humanitarian code that only hospital ships used, and the signature of the Mercy Dawn, and the sound of a woman's voice that could not hide how fast she was breathing. Lieutenant? Yoon at the relay flagged it before she thought. She did not wait for the software to finish its checklist. She sent it on to Deep Command, and then, 'cause the scorched smell in the audio told her things, the waveform did not. She sent it directly to the emergency oversight group that met inside, a room without windows under the council dome. Her supervisor rolled his chair over. Is it a drill? No. How do you know? Yun toggled the raw feed. The room filled with the roar of a hull on fire and the thin thread of a child's cry. And her supervisor did not ask any more questions. Within 2 minutes, the oversight group had the signal. Within 4, the council did. Within 6, an automatic. Scanner at Deep Command had matched the missile plume signature to a manufacturing code associated with one power block only. A block that had signed the sacred transport accords with a pen on Live Hala 2 generations ago. The computer marked the match as 87% certain. A human looked at the same shapes and said, It is higher, General Sophia Marin stood over the table with both hands planted as if the table might run. She had fought 2 border wars and 1 defense of Mars Station. She had retired 5 years ago and hated the color of her garden gloves. Now she forgot her garden gloves and said, "This is not piracy. Pirates close to steal. Those ships are keeping distance. They make a show. They want to be seen." She did not look up at the council. She kept her eyes on the slow spin of the hospital ship in static. The chairwoman's voice was steady. "Why do you say they can?" Marin's mouth went hard. "To test us. To tell the small states that the Red Cross is only paint now." The room was very quiet. The oversight group had its own siren, an old analog bell that rarely rang. And now it rang once, then again, because the alert level climbed while they were still deciding what to call the first level. "Open the vault," the chairwoman said. An aide blinked. "Ma'am, you heard me." He ran. In the engineering decks of Mercy Dawn, Chief Dahl and her crew crawled through a passage that was now a tunnel of shadows and hot air. Their masks were slick with sweat, and their gloves stuck to handholds. She carried an old tool because old. Tools worked when smart tools went blind in smoke. The pump valves were 3 turns past redline. Power to the forward foam tank was erratic. She swore and banged a housing with the handle, and the pump stuttered and then ran. And the crew around her made a short, ragged cheer. A boy in a cadet jumpsuit clung to the rung above her. "Chief, you can hold this light?" she said, "and if I drop, you can shout at me until I stand up." He did both. Was very good at the shouting part. It kept him from looking at the small window in the bulkhead where space showed black and full of glitter. That was not stars but pieces of their ship. "Chief," the cadet said after a breath. "Why are they doing this?" She thought of many answers. She chose one that would keep his hands from shaking, "'Cause they think we will break. But we are a hospital ship. We only know how to hold." He nodded like someone memorizing rules. And she smiled under her mask, where he could not see. The raiders adjusted their line and began firing in a slower pattern, as if they timed their shots to test response, and the bridge team saw it at once. Because they were not blind, Riaz ordered counterburns at strange intervals, half-second puffs, to change the ship's spin tick by tick. And those small changes made to missiles miss the heat of the engine cone and tear through empty space. Where they had expected a throat. Prax stared at the tactical display, then back at the larger spot behind the raiders. "Sir, that big signature carrier, yes," Rhea said. "It is a shepherd. The wolves do not bite without the shepherd watching. The shepherd will not let anyone else near the flock," Prax said, the words bitter in his mouth. He did not say "we are the flock." Did not need to. "Send again," Rhea said. "Send everything. Use old code. Use the civil net. Use the deep beacons. Someone will hear." Prax sent. He used a code so old he had learned it in a classroom with paper. He used a beacon that flung light like a rock. He used the humanitarian ping that had not changed in 2 centuries because you did not change the sound of a life. Ring unless you were a fool. And someone heard. The doors in the mountain under the Antarctic shelf were made to stay shut until the universe needed them open. They were inches of metal and feet of rock, and a grid of locks that had to agree like old men at a chessboard. Now they rolled back. Air moved like it remembered what wind was. Light flooded a room that had not been bright in 50 years. Inside, ships slept. Their hulls were not white. They were the gray of storms and the black of new space. Names were written on them in languages that had saved cities. Resolute, Kismet, Ashoka, Morning Star. Some were old and had fought the wars your grandparents whispered about. Some were not that old and had never fought at all because the treaties had been strong and the years had been kind. All woke together as if they shared a nervous system. Technicians ran on echoing catwalks. Automated lifts groaned and then remembered how to glide. A cap on a fuel line blew off and banged the floor like a gunshot. No one flinched because everyone expected thunder today. General Marin walked the length of the main dock with a tablet in her hand and a line of officers at her back. She did not raise her voice. She did not need to. Her words traveled with the work. Reactor checks on first and second dread. Spin them in parallel. Carrier group, launch prep only, No payload hardening yet. We move fast. Pick for destroyers. 4 escort. 1 scout with fresh lattice, and 2 relief tenders with full medical stack. Yes, medical. We are going to a hospital ship. Young officer matched her stride. General, full engagement rules? Marin's eyes were cold as a star. We are answering a war crime. Our first shot will be a shield. Our second will be the last warning. If they do not stop at the third, she did not finish the sentence. She did not need to. The officer swallowed and nodded and sprinted away. And Marin stopped at the nose of the lead dreadnought, where the old paint still showed under the dust. She put her palm on the metal. It was warm already. The ship hummed. To her hand, like a big animal that had slept too long and was happy to be awake. On the council channel, analysts built a picture from pieces. The missile bloom, the spacing of the radar line, the frequency of communications bursts that were not answers, but orders. 12 points made a shape. The shape spelled a name. They did not speak it out loud yet, because the first person to say a name starts a war officially, and not just in truth. The chairwoman looked at the shape anyway. She looked at the faces around the table, and she knew that the war had already begun the moment the first Red Cross was hit. And all that remained now was to decide whether Earth would fight it or pretend not to. She did not like pretending. Status of Mercy Dawn. She asked, "Severe damage," an aide said. "Fires contained in 3 decks, uncontrolled in 1. Life support stable with rolling brownouts. Structural integrity at 49% and falling. Captain Reyes continues to transmit. Raiders continue to fire. The carrier behind them has not moved." "Of course it has not moved," the chairwoman said, and if there was any softness in her voice, it was made of ice. "It only needs to watch." She turned to Marin on the secure line. "How long to first jump?" Marin checked with her eyes, and the way her shoulder tilted told a story of engines and crews and the old ache of speed. 90 minutes to sail, 40 to clear the well, 22 first jump. "Make it 62 sail," the chairwoman said. Marin did not say it could not be done. "Yes, ma'am," and Sophia, the chairwoman, added, "Ma'am. If Mercy Dawn breaks before you get there, you still go. You go loud. I understand." The line clicked. The room breathed once, like a chest that had been punched. Then the bell rang again, one hard note that meant the plan had started. Phantom smoke still hung in the corridor when Leanne and Mira pushed the last stretcher into D section. The air here tasted like cold metal instead of hot, and the lights held. Steady. A medical bot rolled up on a half-melted wheel and extended a tray of vials, as if this was a regular afternoon. Mira took 3 with a nod of thanks and set them aside for the worst burns. Leanne knelt by Tavy and checked his breathing, then by the miner, then by the girl with the paper skin. She wanted to tell them a story. She did not have time. Hands and she had eyes, and both needed to keep moving. The overhead speaker crackled. "This is Captain Reyes. We are holding. We will keep holding. Medical teams report needs. Okay, engineering, report fires. Everyone else, if you can move, you help someone who cannot. There are no passengers today." Myra smiled at the words even while she taped a line to a blister she did not want to touch. She leaned close to the little boy. "You hear that? The captain says we hold." Tavi nodded, very solemn. "We hold." A small cheer rose then, ragged and brave, and Leanne felt it in her shoulders. It was a real thing. It made the room warmer in a way that had nothing to do with fire. Then the ship lurched so hard that 3 people fell. Something big had hit the aft spine. The hull moaned like a whale again. Leon grabbed the side of a cart, pulled herself up, and didn't let go for a long breath while she listened to the pattern of the sirens. She knew those patterns like songs. This one meant breach contained. It was not the worst song, Dr. Myra said quietly. "If they board, they are not boarding," Leanne said, and she realized she had answered without thinking. She looked toward the ceiling, toward the bridge she could not see. "They are not here to steal. They are here to burn." Mira's jaw clenched. Then we will not give them anything to burn." They went back to work. On the bridge, Prax raised a hand. "Captain, we have a response on Deep Beacon. Code red priority, origin, Earth." Every head turned as if pulled by the same string. "Put it through," Reyes said. The message was very short, did not have room for comfort or for promises they could not keep. It said, "Hold position, fleets en route. Estimate." Short. It added a string of numbers that meant we are not far. We are not lying. We are coming. For a second the bridge was quiet, and then something like laughter came up from the floor.
Ow.
Not happy. It was relief that hurt. Reyes let himself breathe a little deeper and then said, "Tell medical, tell engineering, tell everyone. And then tell me where we can give the ship one more degree of spin to throw off their next shot." Grinned with a mouth that remembered how, "Yes, sir." In the Antarctic vault, the dreadnought Resolute ran through final checks at a speed no designer had ever planned for and passed them because the people at her boards wanted it more than they wanted sleep or air. Engines warm. Reactors singing. Lattice alignment green. Armor charge good. The hangar doors above her opened, and the stars beyond were a thin line that widened. And the old ship shivered like an athlete at the block. General Marin stood on the command island and watched numbers roll. "Signal all ships," she said. "The old rule is in effect. Medical markings are sacred. Any vessel that fires on a hospital ship is declared rogue. Rogue vessels will be disarmed. Rogue commanders will be taken. If they resist, they will be erased. We move to enforce." The signal went out on beams and bursts, an old wire and new light. It reached patrol boats and museums and training sims and half-retired listening posts. People who had never heard of Mercy Dawn straightened in chairs they had been slouching. "In 4 years launch," Marin said. The clamps released. The big ship rose. Behind her, the carrier Morning Star drifted like a mountain with engines. Round her, destroyers slid into a tight skin. Tenders followed, fat with help. The flight. Control officer raised 2 fingers, meaning clear. Marin lowered her hand. The fleet moved, in the last minutes of the hour. The raiders tightened their pattern, and a voice from the big cold shape behind them spoke again on the open band, lazy and cruel. Final warning to all observers. Vessel in question is carrying contraband. Neutral markings are forfeit. This action is legal under Prax. Muted it with 1 tap. And Reyes did not tell him to unmute. Captain Navigation said, "Can slip 3 degrees further into the cloud if we cut heat to the forward ring for 20 seconds. We may lose power to desection if the relay trips." Reyes looked at the numbers. He thought of the children in desection, thought of how a ship dies when one fire meets another and finds oxygen like an old friend. "Do it," he said. "Tell medical to hold breath for 20. The ship turned like an old dancer. The next 2 missiles went wide. The third clipped a fin, and it hurt, but not as much as it could have. Message from Earth repeated, "Sir." Prax said, "Hold position. Fleets en route." Reyes sat very straight. The camera leaves the burning corridors and runs across the black, past the raider line, past the cold big shape that thinks it rules this lane, past the wounded hospital ship that still breathes, and it finds a new shape breaking out of the darkness far away, a spearhead of light, too many engines to count, old hulls and new hearts. The first wave of Earth's answer coming fast and silent. In a deep vault, under a cold continent, more doors are opening, more names wake, more lights turn green. And in the council chamber, the chairwoman speaks the order aloud so there is no confusion left in all the stars. Activate the old fleets. The galaxy saw fire on the Red Cross and pretended it was nothing. Alien ministers sat in tall halls and said words like tragic, regrettable, isolated. They told themselves it was pirates, a mistake, an accident of signals. But Earth did not lie to itself. Earth saw the recordings, heard the screams, counted the missiles, and knew this was deliberate. While others argued, Earth moved in silence. Deep below oceans, inside mountain bunkers, and across forgotten moons, ancient codes awoke, passed like whispers through the dark. Though humanity's fleets stirred not with shouts, not with boasts, but with orders spoken in calm voices that shook. More than thunder, the council chamber on Earth was full, but quiet. No speeches, no shouting, no hands thrown in the air like in the alien assemblies. The walls showed the last feed from Mercy Dawn, smoke curling through white corridors. A nurse pressing cloth to a child's face, a captain standing at his post. As if his ship still had teeth to bare, the chairwoman of Earth sat at the center. Her face was calm, her hands were folded. But her eyes were colder than the stars. General Sophia Marin stood across from her, flanked by 2 admirals and a row of younger officers who had never fired in true war, but carried the weight of generations in their blood. The chairwoman finally spoke. The galaxy debates. We act, General. Do you have your forces? Marin nodded once. Yes, ma'am. First Dread Group warmed. Carrier Morning Star in sequence. Destroyer escort lines forming. Relief tenders armed with medical bays, ready to sail within the hour. Good, the chairwoman said. She looked around the chamber, letting her silence press on the others until no one doubted what was coming. Send the order. All fleets awaken. Messages locked. In vaults, for centuries, were unsealed. Some were simple code strings of numbers, no longer than a breath that told sleeping machines to breathe again. Others were more like prayers, read aloud by commanders whose voices trembled, though they would never admit it. On Luna, under a shield of gray rock, an entire dry dock opened its ribs to reveal old warships like bones of giants. Men and women in exosuits floated through the vacuum, scraping away dust that had not been touched since before their grandparents were born. On Mars. The sand shifted as hidden silos rose from the dunes, their long frames glittering in the dawn. Above, orbital yards lit with sudden power, casting blue shadows across the red planet. In the belt, 1,000 listening posts blinked awake. Their arrays turned as one, eyes of steel scanning for prey. And in Neptune's shadow, a graveyard of ships stirred hulks that had been sealed, forgotten, declared obsolete. Now they hummed as if insulted by the years of silence. Humanity's rage was not loud. It was organized. It was precise. On the burning Mercy Dawn, Captain Armin Reyes did not know how close help was. He only knew the signals were sent, and that was enough. He held the line as long as he could, but Earth Command knew. Deep Command in Antarctica tracked his last transmission. On their screens, a red line of data cut through static. It was weak, broken, half noise. But it was there. Captain Reyes still transmitting, an analyst said. Adjusting her headset, General Marin leaned over her. What's his status? Barely holding, General. Structural integrity below 50%. Fires in multiple compartments. Casualties high. Children still alive. Marin's jaw locked. She turned to her second. Signaled him. Hold. We are coming. Her officer hesitated. Let the raiders intercept. Let them, Marin said. Or remind them who is listening. The raiders circling the hospital? Ship laughed when they caught Earth's signal. To them, it was proof humans were foolish sending promises instead of power. Their commander sat in his chair, confident, his carrier heavy behind him like a shield. Let them come, he told his officers. We will show them what happens when they raise their heads too high. Their fleets are old. Their admirals are old. They cannot face us. But he did not know what truly stirred beneath Earth's oceans. In the Antarctic vault, Dreadnought Resolute powered her engines. The chamber shook as heat bled into stone. Engineers worked double pace, securing clamps, sealing coolant lines, rushing as alarms chimed in rhythm. General Marin stood on the command platform, her hand resting on the cold rail. Status: primary reactors online. Weapons arrays warming. Lattice drive charged to 60%. Estimated time to jump, 70 minutes. Cut it to 50, Marin said. 50 risks lattice stability, then risk it. We are not walking into a skirmish. We are walking into history. The crew did not argue again. In orbit above Earth, civilian stations went dark. Passenger ships were rerouted. The public did not yet know why. They only saw the stars fill with shadows of warships rising like mountains. Their hulls scarred from old wars, their names glowing anew. Children pointed from station windows. Some cheered, not knowing the weight of what they saw. Quiet, sensing that history was shifting in ways no one could undo. In the council chamber, the chairwoman leaned forward. The aliens believe they can strike at healers and walk away. They believe Earth will remain silent. They believe wrong. When our fleets arrive, there will be no speeches, no threats, only proof. She let the words hang heavy. We are not fighting for territory. We are not fighting for conquest. You're fighting for the soul of law itself. If the Red Cross can be broken, then nothing is safe. That ends tonight. No one disagreed. No one dared. The orders went out. Cold, sharp. Final. Deploy the dreadnought groups. Reactivate silent stations. Prepare for judgment. Earth's voice was calm, but the galaxy would remember it like thunder. The last scene shows the Mercy Dawn still drifting, still burning, still alive, but only just. In the distance, the Raider carrier looms like a predator at rest, sure of its kill. But far beyond, in the black between stars, a ripple forms. A shape moves. Ancient engines flare. Earth's fleets are coming, silent, furious, ready. The Raiders drank and laughed inside their ships, proud of the smoke still rising from the wounded Mercy Dawn. To them it was a victory. To them it was proof that Earth was weak, too soft, too bound by old treaties to rise. They did not know the truth. They did not see the shadows moving through the void. Because when Earth strikes, it does not send a warning first. When Earth answers, it does not announce itself with speeches. It arrives in silence. It's always the last sound before thunder. The carrier vigilant crown sat behind its line of raiders, like a spider in its web. Its commander, High Warden Dreekle, leaned back in his chair with a cup of dark liquor. Record every second, he ordered. The council will pretend to be outraged. But the small worlds will see. They will understand Earth cannot protect them. Our word is law now. His officers nodded, though a few glanced at each other uneasily. The red crosses burned on every screen. Even for them, even for soldiers trained to obey, the image felt wrong. But fear of Dreekle was stronger than their doubt. On Mercy Dawn, Captain Reyes still held the bridge. His uniform was blackened at the edges, his skin cut by falling panels. But he did not leave. He refused. His crew watched him, drew strength from his stillness, even as their ship groaned around them. Another volley inbound, Prax reported, his voice hoarse. Brace again, Reyes said. The missiles lit the black, then veered suddenly, two of them shredding in mid-flight, as if invisible claws had torn them apart. The others went wide. Missing their mark completely, the bridge crew froze. What was that? Prax whispered. Reyes leaned forward. His heart pounded, but his face stayed still. He knew. He knew Earth, he said softly. Far beyond the Raider line, the black of space rippled. A shape emerged, slow and massive. Hull plating glistened as old as stone, engraved with names in a dozen human tongues. The dreadnought Resolute slid out of the dark with no lights, no broadcast, nothing but its vast shadow falling across the battlefield. Behind it, destroyers fanned out like knives. Their engines burned blue fire, but their guns were cold and waiting. The carrier Morning Star rose next, a mountain of steel bristling with hangars. Earth had arrived and the galaxy would never forget its entrance. Inside Resolute, General Moren stood on the command deck, her hands clasped behind her back. Her eyes never left the tactical display. Target the Raider line, she said. Her voice was level, quiet, deadly. Disable engines first. Leave no survivors who can fire again. I, General. The dreadnought's guns hummed as power surged into their cores, rail batteries locked on, coil cannons aligned. The destroyers spread like hunting dogs. The order came down in 3 words that would echo across human fleets for centuries. Engage. With precision, the first volley came without warning. Beams of white fire lanced across the void. For Raider ships disintegrated in a heartbeat, their hulls tearing open like paper. Crews had no time to scream, the others spun in confusion. Firing blindly, their laughter gone, their drink forgotten. Panic flooded their comes. Where did they come from? It's Earth is here. They were supposed to be, the words cut short as another destroyer strike shattered to more ships. On Mercy Dawn's bridge. Prax gasped. Serve their tearing through them, watch, Reyes said, his voice low. His hands gripped. The chair, don't cheer yet. Watch. The raider line broke like ice under a hammer. Ships scattered, engines flaring, but Earth's fleet moved with precision. Every retreat path was cut. Every escape attempt ended in fire. It was not a battle. It was an execution. On the Vigilant Crown, Warden Dreekle rose to his feet, his cup spilling. No, impossible. Earth cannot field fleets like this anymore. Their dreadnoughts are relics, but the relics moved like predators reborn. The Resolute loomed on his screens, a beast of steel, every gun tracking with ruthless calm. His officers stared in terror, returned fire. He screamed, "Destroy them." The first shots from the carrier never reached their targets. Point defense beams swatted missiles from the air. Destroyers rolled and evaded, cutting counterfire with ease. The Morning Star unleashed a cloud of fighters that tore into Raider, squirts like knives through cloth. Dreekle's voice cracked. Call reinforcements. Call the Comes officer shook his head. No one is responding, because no one wanted to challenge Earth now. Not after what they were seeing. On the battlefield, one raider tried to run. Its engines flared, breaking formation, sprinting for the shadows. Marin's eyes narrowed. Disable only. A destroyer fired. Single shot lanced across the void, slicing the ship's engines clean off. The raider spun helplessly, drifting like a crippled animal. Leave them adrift, Marin said. Let them watch what comes next. The Resolute's forward batteries charged again, humming louder. Energy built in its core, brighter than any star. Target the carrier, Marin ordered. The Vigilant Crown filled the dreadnought's sights. Dreekle shouted, raged, cursed, but inside he was afraid. His ship was strong, but the Resolute was stronger. He knew it. He felt it. Marin raised her hand. Fire. The dreadnought unleashed its fury. Beams of pure energy ripped into the carrier's shields, tearing them apart in seconds. Explosions blossomed along its hull. Metal screamed. Crews died before they understood they had already lost. The Vigilant Crown buckled, fire spreading across its decks. Marin's voice was calm, final. End it. The last volley struck, and the carrier split in two, flames spilling into the void. Like rivers of blood. On Mercy Dawn, survivors cheered, sobbed, clutched each other as they watched the impossible become real. Reyes only whispered one word. Justice. The battlefield grew quiet, the last raider fires fading. The Resolute and her fleet stood unchallenged, the red crosses of the Mercy Dawn reflected in their hulls. But Marin's eyes did not soften. She knew this was only the first retaliation. The true war had not yet begun. Far away in the Galactic council chambers, the news had already spread. Panic grew. And in the shadows of alien empires, new fleets stirred, whispering, Earth has awakened. The Galactic Council chamber was built to make rulers feel safe. Its pillars rose like mountains, its glass ceilings looked out at stars, and its walls echoed with old laws older than empires. Every empire sent its most powerful voices here to debate and posture. But on this day, no one spoke with power. Screens around the chamber showed something none of them had thought possible. Earth's fleet had moved. The raiders were gone, their carriers split in two, their wreckage burning like dying suns. For the first time in living memory, a hospital. Ship had been attacked hand for the first time in centuries. Humanity had answered. Not with words, not with a plea, but with silence, precision, and fire. The chamber was full. Delegates sat in tiered rows, each in their own carved seat, each wearing robes and symbols of their people's pride. Normally, they would talk over each other, argue until the walls shook. Today, they whispered, and even whispers sounded too loud. The central screens replayed the destruction. The dreadnought Resolute sliding from the dark. The Morning Star releasing swarms of fighters. Raiders cut down like insects. the vigilant crown breaking in two, fire pouring into the void. An insectoid delegate twitched his antennae. It cannot be real. Earth does not have fleets of this size, Scaled Representative hissed softly. We were told their power had faded. Their fleets were mothballed. Their admirals were ghosts. And yet he raised a clawed hand at the burning images. Yet we see this. The council speaker, a tall avian with blue feathers dulled by age, struck the floor with her staff. Order, there will be order. Her words were brave, but her feathers trembled. The chamber did not quiet. Delegates turned to one another, asking the same question again and again. If Earth could do this without warning, what else are they hiding? High above them, in the shadowed observation box, the human delegation had not moved. They sat in silence. 3 men, 2 women, all dressed in black uniforms with no insignia, no color, no need for symbols. Their faces gave nothing away. They had said nothing since the session began. They did not need to. The others glanced at them, avoided their eyes, then looked back quickly to the burning carrier on the screens. A delegate with crystalline skin rose, his voice breaking through the whispers. This is outrageous. Earth has violated council space. They brought warships where only peace may stand. The human at the center of the delegation finally spoke, his voice calm, level, carrying across the chamber without effort. We did not bring warships to council space. We brought them to a battlefield where your law had already failed. The chamber froze. Its words cut like a blade through cloth. The crystalline delegate sputtered. Your people destroyed a carrier. Do you understand what you've unleashed? The human's eyes were cold. Do you understand what they unleashed when they fired on a hospital ship? The screen shifted. Now they showed the Mercy Dawn, its broken hull, its burning corridors, children huddled in blankets, doctors working through fire and smoke. Gasps filled the chamber. A few turned their heads away. One of the youngest delegates whispered, "Those markings. The Red Cross." "Yes," the human replied. "The one symbol every empire swore to respect. The one promise older than this chamber itself, and yet it burned." The speaker struck her staff again. "Delegates, we must remain calm." Calm. A furred delegate snapped, rising to his full height. "How are we to remain calm when Earth has proven itself willing to kill fleets? In silence? They can do this without warning? What stops them from turning their guns on us?" Fear spread like wildfire. Words tumbled, accusations flew, but no one could form a defense against what they had seen, because the truth was written. In fire on the screens, Earth had not hesitated. Earth had not negotiated. Earth had not warned. Earth had judged. In the council chamber, voices rose, panic breaking through the walls of diplomacy. They are too dangerous. They broke the balance. No. It was the raiders. Who gave them the right? They always had the right. Chaos threatened to drown the room until the speaker raised her staff once more. Silence. The room stilled. Her voice carried now, but it shook. "We cannot allow this to escalate. If Earth does not stand down, the balance of the galaxy will," the human interrupted, his voice soft but sharp as a knife. It was broken the moment a hospital ship was attacked. At that moment, a new signal cut through the chamber. Every screen flickered, turning black, then showing a single emblem, Earth's crest. Behind it, the face of the chairwoman appeared, stern and unyielding. "This message is for all who can hear," she said. Her voice was steady, measured, yet every syllable carried the weight of fire. "We do not seek conquest. We do not seek territory. But know this. The rules are not optional. The Red Cross is sacred. Those who fire on healers fire on humanity itself." The chamber held its breath. Her eyes hardened. "This ends now." The words rang in silence. No one moved. No one spoke. The message ended, leaving only the quiet hum of the chambers. Power systems. Delegates sat frozen, their minds racing with fear and disbelief. This ends now. The phrase was not a warning. It was a verdict. In the observation box, the humans rose. Without bowing, without looking at anyone, they walked out. The door shut behind them with a sound like iron. The chamber erupted again, but this time it was not argument. It was fear. Pure, simple fear. Because every delegate knew Earth had just declared itself judge. And in their silence, no one could deny that Earth had the strength to enforce its judgment. The last image lingers on the burning wreck of the Mercy Dawn being, escorted by Earth destroyers into safe space. In the council chamber, chaos grows as aliens argue. But the echo of Earth's words drowns everything else. This ends now. And far across the stars, in hidden war rooms, empires that once mocked humanity now scramble to redraw their maps because they finally understand that Earth has awakened. And the galaxy will never be the same. The Galactic Council had seen fleets before. They had seen great wars rise and fall, empires stretch across the stars, and armadas that blocked the light of suns. But nothing prepared them for this. At first, the skies above the Council world darkened, as if a storm had passed across the stars. Then the storm grew thicker, brighter, alive with engines that burned blue and white. Thousands of ships, old and new, vast and endless, poured out of the void in silence. No trumpet, no signal, no words. Only the presence of power so heavy it bent the very air of the chamber below. The council delegates ran to the high windows and saw shadows fall over their world. The fear that followed was older than law, older than politics. It was the fear of prey when it seized the hunter. Inside the chamber, chaos broke. Delegates shouted, robes flared, translators struggled to keep up with the flood of languages. Some cried for weapons, others for surrender, most only cried. The speaker slammed her staff against the floor again and again, but no sound could silence what hung above them, Earth's fury. The screens in the chamber lit up with live feeds from orbital stations. A vast human fleet hung in the black, the dreadnought Resolute at its center, massive as a continent. The carrier Morningstar spread its wings of hangars. Dozens of destroyers, cruisers, and frigates filled the spaces between their weapons, arrays humming like hearts. And behind them, more kept arriving older ships with scars of past wars, new ships gleaming with fresh steel, tenders heavy with supplies. It was not just an armada. It was a declaration carved in metal. General Sophia Marin stood on the bridge of the Resolute. Her face was steady, but in her chest she felt the weight of history. Around her, officers moved in calm silence, checking systems, aligning weapons, watching the council planet below. "Fleet reports ready," her aide said. "All wings in formation, dread groups aligned. Fighter squadrons deployed and circling." Marin nodded. She tapped the command rail with 2 fingers, a habit as old as her first war. "Keep transmissions minimal. No threats, no boasts. They will see us, and that will be enough." "Yes, General?" The officer hesitated, then asked quietly, "What if they fire first?" Marin's eyes narrowed, and they will learn why Earth does not forgive twice. On the Council planet, military stations scrambled. Defense cannons turned skyward. Fighter wings tried to form lines. But compared to what hovered above them, their weapons looked like toys. Their fleets were scattered, unprepared, shocked. Scaled delegates shouted across the chamber, "We must defend ourselves. Humanity has come to enslave us." "No," another answered, a crystalline ambassador whose voice cracked. "They came to answer the attack on the hospital ship. Do you not see? This is justice." But the word justice was drowned by fear. The human delegation re-entered the chamber. They walked with calm steps, their black uniforms catching the glow of the panic-lit screens. The room fell quiet despite itself. The lead delegate, a woman with gray streaks in her hair and eyes that had watched wars end, stepped forward. She carried no weapon, no emblem, only silence. She let the silence stretch until the chamber squirmed under it. Then she spoke. "Earth does not come to conquer." Her voice was low but carried to every corner. "Earth comes to remind you of the law you swore to uphold. A law older than this chamber. It's a law written not in treaties but in blood. Do not fire on healers. Do not fire on the helpless. The screen shifted again. They showed the Mercy Dawn, still scarred and smoking, escorted by destroyers into safe space. Children in blankets. Doctors with ash on their faces. Nurses working by the light of ruined corridors. Murmurs filled the chamber. Some turned their eyes away, ashamed. Above, in orbit, Earth's fleet moved. Full view of the Council's military sensors. Their weapons arrays glowed faintly, not armed, but not hidden. A reminder. A promise. Station commanders shouted into their coms, voices tight with panic. They outnumber us 10-1. Our defense grid won't hold. What do they want? The answer came not as a threat, but as a broadcast. Every screen. In the Council world, from the highest towers to the smallest market stalls, lit with Earth's crest. Then the face of Earth's chairwoman appeared again. Her voice was calm, steady, cold. We are not your rulers. We are not your conquerors. We are your reminder. This law will not be broken again. It's not by pirates, not by empires, not by anyone. This is not negotiation. This is the end of the argument. She paused, her eyes cut into every heart watching. The Red Cross is sacred. Break it again, and there will be no stars left to hide you. The broadcast ended. Now the screens went black. For a long moment, silence ruled the galaxy. In the chamber, no one spoke.
I'm a number.
One moved. Outside, the fleet hung like a wall of iron and fire. One delegate, voice shaking, whispered what they all thought. If they can summon this without warning, what else do they have waiting? The fear spread deeper, not just of Earth's strength, but of Earth's patience that had now run out. On the Resolute, Marin watched the Council planet spinning slowly below. She let herself breathe once, then spoke to her crew. Hold position. No fire unless provoked. The galaxy will look at us today. They will see the fury of Earth, and they will remember. Her officers saluted. The fleet held its line, silent. Steady, unyielding, the final shot drifts out from the Council world. Past the chambers filled with fear, past the planetary defenses, trembling in silence, and into orbit where Earth's fleet hangs like a wall of mountains. Thousands of ships, engines glowing, hulls lined with scars and light. No one fires, no one dares. And in the dark beyond, more fleets are waking, more engines warming, as Earth whispers across the stars. We are here. We are watching. We do not forgive. The empire that hid behind the raiders believed it was safe. Its rulers lived in high towers with glass floors and gold ceilings. They liked to look down at their cities and tell themselves that order was the same thing as power. Their fleet slept inside armored rings. Their shipyards sat like iron gardens around blue suns. Their ministers rehearsed speeches full of soft, clever words. They had a name for themselves that sounded important, the High Warden Directorate. A long list of laws that always seemed to punish the weak and protect the strong. They watched the burning of the hospital ship and smiled because they thought no one could do anything to them. They were wrong. When Earth's armada filled the sky over the Council world, the Directorate told its people not to be afraid. It is a show, they said on their channels. It will pass. But in their private rooms, they sent orders faster than their own soldiers could read them. Burn records, move funds, hide ships. Prepare friendly speeches for later. Blame pirates. Blame a rogue officer. Blame anyone except the ones who had given the order to fire on the Red Cross at the edge of their capital system. A scout picked up a tremor in the dark. Not a ship, not a fleet. Fold the space around space, where engines write their names. The scout's pilot stared at the pattern and felt empty in his stomach, because he had studied history in school, and he knew the shape. It was the shape of an earth jump, old and deep, the kind you only see when a ship is so big, the fabric bends before it arrives. He whispered to himself, stopped recording, started again, and whispered louder. He sent the signal in 10 copies. He did not wait for permission. In the Directorate's war room, the signal reached a table shaped like a star. The High Wardens gathered around it, their robes heavy, their faces calm for the cameras. They thanked the scout for his service, cut the feed, and ordered the war room doors sealed. They told each other a story. Earth is old, they said. Earth is slow. Their dreadnoughts are museums. It cannot be everywhere. They were wrong again. The fleet that had darkened the council's sky had not come alone. It was only the first blade of a pair of scissors. The second blade opened now, across 6 systems marked in a silent plan. Space folded, and Earth arrived. In the Kell Ring, where the Directorate built its missile spines, 4 human destroyers drifted out of the fold with no lights and skinned their guns in cold. They mapped the heat of every turret in a breath. Then they fired in a rhythm to clean. To be luck. 12 turrets went dark. No blast, no flame. Just power lines quietly cut and control cores rewired by humming pulses that felt like whispers. Engineers stared at boards that showed green squares that would not do anything. Pounded on cases. They screamed into headsets. Nothing changed. At Volume TH, where fuel moons had been drained and caged in metal, Earth's carrier Morningstar arrived, not with bombers, but with tenders. They laced the fuel net with frozen code that closed valves and locked pumps. The flow stopped. Tankers drifted like dead whales. No one died. No one could fire. The Directorate's admirals watched their status maps turn to gray. Over the foundry world of Saravik, the Directorate's capital, a shadow fell across dawn. The Dreadnought. Resolute slid from the fold and took a straight line above the equator like a sword laid on a throat. It did not speak. It did not flash. It simply was. And every sensor saw it. And every adult in every city felt something very old in their bones. General Sophia Marin stood on the Resolute's command island and looked down at the world that had signed orders to murder healers and then sent raider fleets to do the dirty work. She did not smile. She did not speak for the cameras. She looked at the target map and lifted one hand. Begin, she said. The first wave was not fire. It was proof. Across the Directorate, every screen flickered, every billboard shimmered. Every private console went black and then showed the same image. The white hull of the Mercy Dawn, scorched and broken, her red crosses smeared with smoke. Then came the sound, the soft breathing of children with masks, the quiet orders of nurses. The rattle in the voice of a captain who refused to leave his post. Dates, coordinates, missile signatures, command relays, bank transfers, names. The chain from order to action to payment, traced like a wire across 6 systems and placed in front of everyone. 'Cause sunlight is a kind of weapon too. The High Warden shouted at their techs to cut the feed. They could not. Earth had laid quiet cables along the Directorate's own mesh years ago, like a farmer laying irrigation in dry ground. Not to spy on everything forever, humans were too busy to drink every river, but to keep a way open if the day ever came when a hand reached for the Red Cross. The day had come. The way was open. Sarivik's sky bloomed with icons. A new voice filled every channel, steady and clear. The same voice that had told the galaxy, this ends now. This is Earth, the chairwoman said. High Warden Directorate. You are charged with the planning and execution of an attack on a protected medical vessel. You are charged with fabricating false legal cover. You are charged with threatening relief ships. You are charged with murder. She did not lift her voice. She did not need to. Surrender the commanders responsible. Power down your weapons. Okay, open your docks. You have 1 minute.
What?
A minute is a long time when you are afraid. A minute is no time at all when you have already decided. The Directorate tried to speak. The High Warden's face appeared on half the screens, smooth and careful. We reject, he began, but the word broke as the first clock ticked on the corner of the feed. He swallowed. We request the clock ticked again. He looked off screen and someone's hand shook where it touched his sleeve. We propose an inquiry. The minute reached 30 seconds. On the Resolute, young officer watched the timer and thought of a boy named Tavy he had seen on the hospital feed. His cheeks gray with ash, his eyes too old. He straightened his shoulders without knowing why. Around him, the crew worked with the stillness of people who had made up their minds. 20 seconds in the council chamber, where the alien delegates were still standing under the shadow of Earth's Armada. The The same clock ticked. Some turned away, some cried. A few looked at the human delegation and saw no joy in their faces, and understood. Something deep. This was not revenge for pleasure. This was enforcement. 10 seconds. On the Directorate's palace roof, a helicopter screamed to life. In a harbor, a black boat slipped from a private dock. In orbit, the skeleton of a fleet tried to form a wall between the Resolute and the planet. 0, judgment. The chairwoman said. Execute. It began as light. 16 needles of white fell from the Resolute in a precise pattern and kissed the air just above Sarivik's defense array. They did not explode. They opened flowers of silent energy that wrapped the big guns in soft storm and made every circuit forget its name. Screens went calm. Coils cooled. The array went blind without a wound to the concrete in orbit. The Directorate's cruisers flared their engines and turned their noses toward the human dreadnought. Earth's destroyers appeared beside them like ghosts and marked them with blue. Tags power down, a flat voice said on a local channel. This is your one chance. One captain obeyed. 2 tried to run. A single human rail shot took each engine at the throat. The cruisers drifted, alive, out of the fight, their crews breathing, their guns asleep forever. At the Warden Academy, where they taught young officers that mercy was a weakness, the ground shook without breaking. A kinetic blade from orbit passed through the empty parade ground and buried itself 10 meters deep under the armory, severing the locks of every railgun case so cleanly the hinges glowed. The doors fell off. The weapons lay safe and useless. Cadets stared, some in fear, some in shame. 1 or 2 in relief, at the intelligence tower where the Directorate's lies were woven. A rectangle of night cut through the top 20 floors, as if someone had erased them with a ruler. The building below stood unharmed. The servers above had been carried to the sky on a human lifter beam, and then shattered in the cold, where no one would be hurt by falling glass. The truth was left behind, printed and sorted on 1,000 screens for anyone to read, in the capitals. Old Quarter, 3 black cars raced down a street meant for walking. A human dropship fell like a shadow. It did not fire, landed. People ran because that is what people do when large things land near them. The hatch opened, and a team in gray stepped out, with hands empty and helmets dark. No shouting, no threats. They walked to the car in the middle, opened the back door, and pulled a man out by the elbow with care a nurse would use. A camera caught his face. One of the high wardens, the one who had signed the cover order that had turned doctors into war cargo. He tried to speak. No sound came. The camera sent the picture to the world. Across the Directorate, the pattern repeated. Precision, restraint, certainty. Dockyards lost power to weapons but kept power to lights. Barracks doors unlocked while armories sealed. Military bank accounts turned to zero, and printed receipts that showed where the money had gone and where it would now go to reimburse the hospital fleet. Burned. The numbers crawled across screens like ants carrying pieces of sugar, and citizens watched with the same strange feeling. This was punishment. But it did not look like the punishment they had been taught to fear. It looked like a repair done. With a hard hand, not everyone obeyed. In the deep yard at Karf, a warden captain ordered his gunners to fire on a human tender ship that was disabling torpedo racks. The broadside flashed. 2 torpedoes left their rails. The tender flicked sideways like a fish. The torpedo missed. The other kept going straight toward a warehouse where families from the yard slept while their block was rewired, on the Resolutes. Deca sensor officer breathed a word that was not a prayer and pulled a trigger that fired a merest sliver of light that caught the torpedo and pushed it a hand's breadth off its line. It exploded in open water. No one died. The warden ship did. 1 rail shot through the bridge, clean and final. Marin's jaw tightened once. She did not look away. Broadcast that, she said. Both parts went out at once. The torpedo bent away from families, the single white line through a bridge that had chosen to kill children. The silence that followed. Inside the Directorate's central palace, the High Wardens argued in a room that had never heard a true argument before. They blamed each other with soft voices. They prepared to run with soft feet. When the doors opened, they expected fire. What entered was a woman in gray, with a tablet and a line of officers behind her. She recited names. She recited charges. She recited rights, yes. Rights even now, because Earth did not forget what it was. The wardens stared as if she had spoken in rain. She finished, held out a pair of cuffs, and waited. One warden laughed, a thin sound. "Do you think the council will allow this theater?" The woman in gray looked at him the way a surgeon looks at a tumor on a scan. "The council has had its theater," is his judgment. Outside the palace, the city had stopped. People stood on sidewalks with their hands on their mouths. Vendors left carts in the road. In apartment towers, old men sat on edges of beds. In schools, teachers forgot the lesson and turned screens toward windows so the children could see the sky. The human dreadnought hung there, patient as a mountain. The city breathed together. Then the cheers began, quiet, unsure. Building because hurt people know the sound of someone finally making the hurting stop. Not everyone cheered. Some shook, some hid, some watched with faces blank as chalk, because the shape of fear takes time to drain. Earth did not expect thanks. Earth did not ask for it. Earth moved through the Directorate like a river that had finally broken a dam. The dam never had the right to be. On the Mercy Dawn, patched now and cooling under the care of Earth tenders, Captain Reyes stood in a corridor that had once been smoke and heat and was now just a corridor with clean walls and a new sign that said Bay C2, even though everyone would always call it by the old name. Dr. Leanne Park walked past him with Miratan at her side. They had slept for an hour and then stood up because people still needed standing. Tavi sat on a bed with a blanket around his shoulders and the stuffed star in his lap. He watched a small screen that showed a city he did not know and a sky with a ship he would dream about later. "Is it over?" he asked. Mira looked at Leanne. Leanne looked at Reyes. Reyes looked at the ceiling as if he could see through it. "To the shape above a world far away? For the bad ones who fired on us," he said softly, "it is ending now." Tavi nodded, very serious. "Good," he hugged the star. "Do they know the ship song?" Mira smiled with tired eyes. "We will teach them in the council chamber." The delegates watched the same feed everyone else watched. Wardens walking with hands bound. Guns turned to scrap. Ships powered down without smoke. Earth medics stepping out of tenders in the very stations that had once sent orders to kill them. It did something to the room that no speech had ever done. It changed the scale. For years they had balanced words like stones. Today the stones felt light and the words felt small next to the weight of a lawn forest. A young delegate with a soft voice said what old ones would put in reports later. "They are not taking land." "No," another answered, voice rough. "They are taking responsibility." Speaker lowered her staff at last. Her feathers were not steady, but her eyes were clear. She knew history when it walked in. The human delegation did not clap. They did not gloat. The lead delegate's hand rested on the rail and did not move.
Ouch.
Back in for a final message, the chamber leaned forward without meaning to. "High Warden, Directorate." The chairwoman said, "Your command structure is dissolved. Your war assets are neutralized. Your leaders will stand before a tribunal of worlds that still honor law. Your civilians are under protection. Any act of revenge against them will be treated as an attack on Earth." She paused. The room held its breath. To the galaxy, this is not conquest. This is the price of breaking the oldest promise. The feed ended. The stars above the council world kept shining behind the wall of human ships. The Directorate fell, quiet as if someone had turned down all its sound. Then other sounds rose, Osa's hissing over hot metal, children laughing because the city lights came back, distant crying that was not fear anymore, but something softer. Trucks moved, drones lowered crates. A new banner went up on a hospital that had once treated soldiers first and everyone else later. The banner had no flag. It had a red cross. People stood in line, and no one pushed. In a dark room under the Directorate's intelligence tower, a server that had not been erased in time spun up on its own. A line of code woke from a schedule. It began to send a message on a thin channel toward cold space beyond any border a map would draw. Used a name that no Directorate officer had spoken out loud in public. Patron. The message had only 3 words: we were seen. It added a location and a time and a mark that meant continue. On the Resolute, a quiet console and signals caught the faint thread. The officer at the board frowned and leaned closer. He did not call for celebration. He called for Marin. She stepped beside him, read the line, and did not blink. A new shape appeared on the big map, far outside the Directorate's lines. Sitting in black like a spider that lets flies argue about whose fault the web is, Marin did not speak to cameras. She spoke to her bridge. Log it, lock it, not. Chase, not yet. She looked down at Sarovic, at the work still being done, at the faces on 100 screens that were slowly remembering how to breathe. We finish what we came to do. Then we follow the hand that lifted the knife. She turned to the fleet plot and flicked 3 markers into a box with her finger. Quiet Spira, small task force that moved without parades and did work no one wrote songs about. It would leave later, when the world was quiet, and no one but the stars would see them go. Suspense ending for part 7. The Directorate's guns are dark. Its leaders are in cuffs. Its people are under the protection of the very medics they once tried to frighten. The galaxy watches and cannot look away. On the Mercy Dawn, Tavi sleeps at last, with the stuffed star under his cheek. And the ship hums a soft song that sounds like engines and hope. Far beyond the maps, a thin reply slides back to the dead towers. Last whisper, a signal from an empty region labeled only Quiet Sun. It carries no words, just a time and a pulse that feels like a finger tapping on a table. Waiting, General. Marin closes her eyes for a breath and opens them again. Earth has ended one crime. Another waits in the dark. The next order is already forming on her tongue. The galaxy held its breath. The Directorate was broken. Its fleets were ash, its leaders bound, its citizens under protection they had never dreamed possible. But the silence that followed was not peace. It was something heavier, something sharper. Across 1,000 worlds, eyes turned upward toward the human fleets, still hanging in orbit like mountains of steel. Everyone waited to see what humanity would do next. Would they leave? Would they conquer? Would they stay as judges forever? On the Resolute, General Sophia Marin stood at her command rail, her back straight, her eyes fixed not on the planet below, but on the wider stars. She knew the truth. What Earth had done here was not the end. It was only the message, the opening. Note of something larger. Humanity had not come to rule the galaxy. It had come to remind it, and when humanity reminds the galaxy does not forget. The council chambers were filled again, though many seats were empty. Some delegates had fled home, afraid their own worlds would be next. Others sat stiff, pretending calm, whispering to each other as screens replayed the final fall of the Directorate's fleets. The speaker struck her staff. Order. We must decide how to respond. Humanity cannot be allowed to, but her voice faltered as the screens flickered. Every display in the chamber went dark, then lit again with the crest of Earth. The chairwoman appeared, her image taller than any delegate, her face carved from stone. This is the last time I will speak on this matter, she said. Her voice carried no anger, only cold weight. We did not come to claim the Directorate. We did not come to expand our borders. We came for one reason only, to enforce the oldest law in the stars. The Red Cross is sacred. Cross the galaxy, her words reached every station, every colony, every freighter drifting in black. Farmers paused at their plows. Miners shut down drills. Soldiers in a dozen navies sat frozen at their posts. Even pirates in dark corners of space lowered their bottles and listened. The chairwoman's eyes narrowed. Hear me well, if you fire on healers again, if you strike the helpless, if you make war on those who mend the wounded, Earth will answer. And when Earth answers, there will be no stars left to hide you. The chamber was silent. No one dared breathe too loud. On Sarivik, crowds gathered in the streets, staring up at the dreadnought that filled their skies. Some raised fists, some wept, most simply stared, knowing they were seeing a moment that would divide history into before and after. A boy pointed at the sky. "Is it over?" he asked his mother. She pulled him close. "Yes," she whispered, but in her heart she wasn't sure. On the Mercy Dawn, patched and repaired, Dr. Leanne Park walked the corridors that had once been choked with smoke. Children slept in rows, their breathing soft. Tavi clutched his stuffed star, his lips moving as he hummed the half-finished ship song Mira had taught him. The walls were still scarred, but they held. The ship was still alive. Captain Reyes stood at the bridge window, watching Earth's fleet wheel in orbit like constellations given engines. His jaw tightened, his hands behind his back. He knew the war wasn't finished. He could feel it in the stars. But at least for now, the Mercy Dawn was safe in the council chamber. The human delegate spoke once more, his voice as calm as stone. "The galaxy will remember this day," he said. "Not because of who died, but because of who lived." The Directorate tried to prove that mercy was weakness. They were wrong. Mercy is strength. Mercy is humanity's law. Break it again, you will face us again. He turned and walked away. The delegation followed him out in silence, the doors closing behind them like the end of a chapter. Above the council world, Earth's armada turned. Engines flared blue and white, carving rivers of light across the sky. One by one, ships slipped back into the folds of space. Dreadnoughts, carriers, destroyers, cruisers, they vanished into the dark from which they had come, leaving only silence in their wake. When the last human ship was gone, the stars felt different, emptier, but also heavier, as if they still carried the echo of the fleet. But not all ships left. A small squadron remained, tenders and relief craft, hovering near the Mercy Dawn and a handful of Directorate hospitals. Medics in gray uniforms stepped off with supplies, carrying no weapons, only crates marked with red crosses. They did not speak to the crowds that watched. They only worked calmly, efficiently, as if to prove the message with their hands instead of their words. And that message spread faster than light. Earth had not come to conquer. It had come to heal. But it would never again let healing be mocked. Far away, in the Directorate's abandoned intelligence servers, the faint signal continued its crawl into deep black. Somewhere beyond map space, another power had watched, waiting, and now it knew Earth was awake. The galaxy settles into uneasy silence. On 1,000 worlds, people whisper about the day Earth's fleets came in fury and left in silence. Children repeat the 3 words like a prayer. This ends now. Pirates hide their colors. Soldiers check their codes twice, even empires lower their voices when they speak of humanity, but in the far cold of the void, where no suns burn, a new signal blinks. Not from Earth, not from the Directorate. From something older, quieter, deeper, watching, waiting on the Resolute. General Marin stands in her darkened command deck. She sees the report, reads the coordinates, and says only one thing to her crew: prepare. This was only the beginning.